Picture this. It's a quiet Tuesday evening and you just spent 4 hours scrolling through used car listings, comparing VIN decoders, cross-referencing maintenance records, and arguing with yourself about whether that 2004 BMW E46 M3 with 147,000 miles is a dream or a nightmare. Your significant other walks in, sees 17 browser tabs open, and asks what you're doing. You mumble something about research. But we both know the truth. You're deep in the trenches of the used car rabbit hole, and there is no climbing out. You've got spreadsheets. You've got bookmarked forum posts from 2011. You've got a guy on Facebook Marketplace who says the timing chain was done but can't find the receipt. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a little voice is whispering, what if this is the one? What if this is the car that doesn't betray you? What if this is the unicorn? This is legacy motoring, and I spend way too much time thinking about whether used cars are getting better or worse as long-term investments in driving pleasure. If you're someone who obsesses over depreciation curves, reliability data, and the eternal question of whether to buy the cheaper car now or save for the cleaner example later, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Here's the thing. The used car market in 2024 and heading into 2025 is one of the strangest, most contradictory landscapes we've ever seen. On one hand, prices have come down from the absolute insanity of 2021 and 2022, when a base model Honda Civic with 60,000 miles was selling for more than its original sticker price. On the other hand, prices haven't come down nearly as much as people expected. According to data from Cox Automotive, the average used car transaction price in the United States at the end of 2024 was still hovering around $28,300. That's down from the peak of roughly $29,800 in early 2022, but it's still dramatically higher than the pre-pandemic average of about $22,000. So yes, prices dropped. But they dropped like a cat falling off a counter, not like a piano falling out of a window. They landed on their feet and they're still standing there looking at you like nothing happened. Now, you might be thinking, okay, prices are elevated, but at least there's more inventory now. And you'd be partially right. Dealer inventory levels have recovered significantly. Manheim's data shows that wholesale supply was up nearly 10% year over year heading into late 2024. But here's what most people don't realize. The composition of that inventory has changed dramatically. The pandemic created a production gap. For almost 2 full years, new car production was significantly curtailed due to semiconductor shortages, supply chain disruptions, and factory shutdowns. That means the normal pipeline of 2 to 4-year-old off-lease and trade-in vehicles, the sweet spot that most smart used car buyers target, is dramatically thinner than it should be. Think of it like a python that swallowed a basketball. The bulge is working its way through the system, but right now, in this exact moment, there's a gap. The cars that should have been built in 2020 and 2021 largely weren't, or they were built in smaller numbers. So when you go looking for a 3-year-old Toyota Camry or a 2-year-old Mazda CX-5, you find fewer of them, and the ones that exist command a premium.
This is where it gets really interesting, because that gap has created a ripple effect that's pushing buyers in 2 directions simultaneously. Some buyers are moving up, stretching their budgets to buy newer cars because the savings on a slightly older model aren't significant enough to justify the extra wear and the shorter remaining warranty. Other buyers are moving down, skipping the 3 to 5-year-old range entirely and diving into the 7, 8, even 10-year-old market where prices have actually softened more meaningfully. And it's that second group I want to talk to today, because if you're willing to do your homework, if you're willing to be patient and strategic, the older used car market right now offers some genuinely compelling opportunities. But it also contains some absolutely devastating traps that can turn your affordable purchase into a financial black hole. Let me give you a specific example. The Lexus IS 350 from the 2014 to 2020 generation. This car, when it was new, stickered for around $42,000 to $48,000 depending on trim and options. It uses Toyota's bulletproof 2GR FSE 3.5-liter V6, which has proven itself to be one of the most reliable 6-cylinder engines ever mass-produced. The transmission, an 8-speed automatic sourced from Aisin, is similarly robust.
The interior is typically Lexus, meaning it was overbuilt from the factory with materials that age gracefully. A 2015 model with around 90,000 miles is currently trading in the $18,000 to $22,000 range depending on condition and location. That's a car that gives you genuine sports sedan performance, a luxury interior, and Toyota reliability for the price of a new Nissan Sentra. The catch, and there's always a catch, is that at 90,000 miles, you're approaching the window where certain maintenance items become non-negotiable. The water pump on the 2GR engine typically needs attention between 90,000 and 120,000 miles. The serpentine belt and tensioner should be done around the same interval. Spark plugs, if they haven't been changed, are overdue. The transmission fluid, which Lexus controversially labels as lifetime fill, absolutely should be changed every 60,000 miles if you want the gearbox to see 200,000. If the previous owner skipped that service, you're rolling the dice. None of these are catastrophic expenses individually, maybe $1,200 to $1,800 total if you do them all at once at an independent shop, but they need to be factored into your purchase price. The car that looks like a deal at $19,000 is really a $21,000 car once you account for deferred maintenance. And if you skip that maintenance yourself, you're just passing the problem down the road until it becomes a repair instead of a service, and repairs are always more expensive. Look, I see this mistake constantly. Someone buys an older luxury car because the purchase price fits their budget, but they don't budget for the ownership costs. A used BMW 5 Series might cost the same as a used Toyota Camry to purchase, but it absolutely does not cost the same to maintain. The parts are more expensive, the labor is more expensive, the systems are more complex, and when things break, they tend to break in expensive ways. A rear air suspension failure on an older Mercedes E-Class can easily run $2,500 to $4,000 to repair properly. A mechatronic unit failure on a BMW dual-clutch transmission can cost $5,000. A timing chain job on certain Audi 4-cylinders requires removing the engine from the car and can approach $4,000 at an independent shop. Now, you might be thinking, but I'll just learn to work on it myself. And I respect that attitude enormously. The DIY approach is one of the most powerful tools in the enthusiast's arsenal. But let's be honest about what that actually means. Working on modern cars requires an increasingly specialized set of tools and knowledge. You need a quality scan tool, not just a $20 code reader, but something that can access manufacturer-specific modules, perform bidirectional controls, and read live data. You need a decent set of metric tools, a torque wrench, jack stands that you actually trust with your life. You need space to work. You need time. And most critically, you need access to accurate repair information. Not YouTube videos from guys who skip steps, but actual factory service manual procedures. Here's a statistic that surprised even me. According to a 2023 survey by the Auto Care Association, the average cost of an unscheduled repair at a professional shop in the United States was $413. That's the average. For vehicles over 8 years old, that number jumps to $587. And for European luxury brands over 8 years old, it climbs to $847. These aren't made-up numbers designed to scare you. This is real data from real repair orders across thousands of shops nationwide. When you extrapolate that across typical ownership, where most cars need 2 to 4 unscheduled repairs per year, you start to see how an older luxury car can eat you alive financially even if you bought it for a bargain price. But here's the flip side, and this is where I want to push back against the doom and gloom narrative. Not all older cars are money pits. Some vehicles have earned their reputations for longevity through decades of real-world performance. The Toyota 4Runner, particularly the 5th generation that launched in 2010 and is still being produced in updated form, is essentially unkillable if you maintain it. The 4.0-liter 1GR FE V6 routinely sees 300,000 miles with basic maintenance. The 5-speed automatic transmission, while not the most modern gearbox available, is profoundly reliable. The body-on-frame construction means that rust is your primary enemy, not structural fatigue. A 2012 4Runner with 120,000 miles, assuming the frame is clean, is barely middle-aged. The Honda Accord from the 9th generation, 2013 to 2017, represents what might be the single best value proposition in the used car market right now. The 2.4-liter K24 four-cylinder paired with either a 6-speed manual or a CVT is a powertrain combination that Honda refined over decades. These cars routinely exceed 200,000 miles with nothing more than oil changes, brake pads, and tires. A clean 2015 Accord EXL with 100,000 miles is currently available in the $13,000 to $16,000 range. For that money, you get a spacious, comfortable, fuel-efficient sedan with a proven track record of reliability. It's not exciting, it's not going to turn heads, but it's going to start every morning, it's going to get 34 miles per gallon on the highway, and it's going to do those things for years without drama. The Mazda Miata, any generation but particularly the NC from 2006 to 2015 and the ND from 2016 onward, deserves special mention. This is a car that offers genuine driving joy at a price point that makes almost everything else look overpriced by comparison. An NC Miata with reasonable miles can still be found in the $10,000 to $16,000 range. The mechanicals are simple and robust. The aftermarket support is extraordinary. The driving experience is something that cars costing 3 times as much struggle to match. If your goal is miles per dollar, nothing in the used car market touches the Miata. This is where it gets really interesting though, because beyond individual model recommendations, there's a broader strategic question that every used car buyer needs to answer. What's your actual ownership plan? Are you buying a car to keep for 2 years and flip? Are you buying something to drive for a decade? Are you buying a project car that you'll improve over time? Each of these scenarios demands a completely different purchasing strategy, and I see people confuse them constantly. If you're buying to keep long-term, prioritize mechanical condition over cosmetics every single time. A car with a perfect exterior but a neglected engine is a ticking bomb. A car with some paint chips and a door ding but a meticulously maintained drivetrain is a treasure. Get the pre-purchase inspection. I cannot stress this enough. A $150 to $250 pre-purchase inspection at an independent shop that specializes in the brand you're considering is the single highest return investment you can make in the car buying process. I've seen $200 inspections save people $8,000 by catching hidden problems. I've seen people skip inspections to save money and then spend $5,000 on repairs within the first 3 months. The math is not complicated. If you're buying something as a shorter-term ownership proposition, cosmetics matter more because they affect resale value. But mechanical condition still matters because repair costs eat into your margin. The sweet spot for short-term ownership is a car that's cosmetically clean, mechanically sound, but slightly undermarketed. Maybe listed with bad photos, a vague description, or priced by someone who doesn't know what they have. Finding those deals requires patience and volume. Let me talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention in used car discussions, and that's the concept of total cost of ownership versus purchase price. These are fundamentally different numbers, and confusing them is one of the most expensive mistakes you can make. Purchase price is what you hand over to the seller. Total cost of ownership includes purchase price plus insurance, fuel, maintenance, repairs, registration, taxes, depreciation during your ownership period, and eventual resale value or lack thereof. When you calculate total cost of ownership, the hierarchy of good deals often inverts completely. Let me give you a real example from my own experience. A few years ago, I was comparing 2 cars for a friend who needed reliable daily transportation. Option 1 was a 2013 BMW 328i with the N20 turbocharged 4-cylinder, 87,000 miles, priced at $14,500. Option 2 was a 2016 Toyota Corolla LE with 62,000 miles, priced at $16,200. On purchase price alone, the BMW was cheaper. It was also faster, more luxurious, more fun to drive, and had more features. The Corolla was, well, a Corolla. It was appliance-grade transportation with the excitement level of a ceiling fan. But here's the thing. When we ran the total cost of ownership numbers over a projected 3-year ownership period, the story flipped completely. Insurance on the BMW was $187 per month. Insurance on the Corolla was $112 per month. That's a $2,700 difference over 3 years just in insurance. Fuel costs, assuming 12,000 miles per year, came out to roughly $1,850 per year for the BMW on premium gas versus $1,340 per year for the Corolla on regular. That's another $1,530 difference over 3 years. Maintenance using real-world data from repair databases averaged $1,400 per year for the BMW versus $450 per year for the Corolla, another $2,850 difference. And then there's the depreciation and repair risk. The N20 engine in that Generation 328i has a well-documented timing chain issue where the chain guide and tensioner can fail, typically between 80,000 and 120,000 miles. The repair costs between $2,000 and $3,500 depending on how much damage has occurred by the time it's caught. It's not a question of if it will happen, but when. The Corolla's 1.8-liter 2ZR-FAE engine has no such known failure mode. It just runs. When you add it all up, the BMW that costs $1,700 less to purchase was projected to cost approximately $7,000 more to own over 3 years. The cheaper car was actually the dramatically more expensive car. My friend bought the Corolla. 3 years later, she sold it for $12,800, having spent less than $2,000 on maintenance and repairs the entire time. The total cost of ownership for those 3 years came out to roughly $7,400, or about $205 per month for reliable transportation. If she'd bought the BMW and experienced average ownership costs, her 3-year total would have been closer to $16,000, or about $444 per month, for the same basic function of getting from point A to point B. Now, I'm not saying never buy the BMW. I'm saying understand what you're buying and why. If driving engagement, interior quality, and brand prestige matter to you and you have the budget to support the ownership costs, the BMW is a legitimate choice. Joy has value. Driving pleasure has value. The tactile satisfaction of a well-engineered machine has value that doesn't show up on a spreadsheet. But if you're buying the BMW primarily because it's cheaper than the Corolla and you think you're getting a deal, you're about to learn an expensive lesson about the difference between price and cost. Here's what most people don't realize about the current used car market. The real opportunities aren't in the obvious places. Everyone knows that Toyotas and Hondas hold their value. That's precisely why they're often overpriced in the used market relative to their actual condition. A high-mileage Civic isn't automatically a good buy just because Civics are reliable. It's only a good buy if that specific Civic has been maintained properly and is priced appropriately for its actual condition. Brand reputation creates a halo effect that can inflate prices beyond rational levels. The real opportunities are in the cars that are undervalued because of brand perception rather than actual quality. Let me give you some examples that might surprise you. The Buick Regal from 2011 to 2017 shares its platform, engine, and transmission with the much more expensive and much more sought-after Saab 9.5. The 2.0-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder in the Regal GS is a genuinely capable powertrain. The chassis dynamics are competent. The interior, while not luxury car levels of refinement, is significantly better than most people expect from a Buick. And because the Buick badge carries approximately zero cachet with enthusiasts, these cars are chronically underpriced. A 2015 Regal GS with 70,000 miles can be found for $12,000 to $14,000. That's less than a comparable Volkswagen GTI from the same era, despite offering similar performance and arguably better reliability. The Kia Stinger GT is another example. When it launched in 2018, automotive journalists universally praised it as a genuine sports sedan capable of competing with the BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe and Audi A5 Sportback. It used a twin-turbocharged 3.3-liter V6, producing 365 horsepower, sent to all 4 wheels through an 8-speed automatic. The problem, at least from a resale perspective, was the Kia badge. Buyers who could afford a $52,000 sports sedan generally didn't want to explain to their neighbors why they bought a Kia. As a result, Stinger GTs have depreciated aggressively. A 2018 GT with 50,000 miles currently trades in the $26,000 to $30,000 range. for a twin-turbo V6 all-wheel drive sports sedan with a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty that transfers to second owners. The value proposition is almost absurd. The Genesis G70, closely related to the Stinger, offers a similar story with slightly more prestige and slightly better interior materials. A 2019 G70 3.3 with reasonable miles can be found in the low $30,000 range. Compare that to a similarly equipped BMW 340i from the same year, which still commands $35,000 to $40,000, and the Genesis starts to look like the smarter purchase. The mechanicals are robust, the warranty coverage is exceptional, and the driving experience, while different in character from the BMW, is genuinely engaging. But I want to be fair and address the counter-argument directly. Brand prestige affects resale value, and resale value affects total cost of ownership. If you buy a Genesis G70 for $30,000 and it depreciates to $20,000 in 3 years, while a BMW 340i bought for $38,000 depreciates to $30,000 in the same period, you've lost $10,000 on the Genesis and $8,000 on the BMW. The cheaper car actually depreciated more in both absolute and percentage terms. This is a real phenomenon with Korean luxury cars, and it needs to be factored into your calculations. The solution is to buy these undervalued cars at the point in their depreciation curve where the steepest losses have already occurred. For most vehicles, that's somewhere between 5 and 7 years old. The first owner absorbed the devastating initial depreciation. The second owner absorbed the continued decline. By the time you're the third owner, the car's value has largely stabilized, and your annual depreciation cost is minimal. You're essentially paying for the car's remaining useful life at a fraction of what that usefulness originally cost. This brings me to what I think is the single most important principle in used car buying, and it's something I wish someone had told me years ago. The best used car is not the most reliable car, the most prestigious car, or even the cheapest car. The best used car is the one that's been loved by its previous owner. A meticulously maintained Mercedes is a better buy than a neglected Toyota every single day of the week. Maintenance history trumps brand reputation. Service records trump reliability ratings. The individual car story matters more than the model's aggregate data. When I'm evaluating a used car, I look for evidence of an owner who cared. Are the oil changes documented at regular intervals? Are the tires a quality brand, or did they cheap out with the lowest rated option available? Is the interior clean, suggesting someone who respected the vehicle? Are there records from a consistent shop, suggesting a long-term relationship with a mechanic who knew the car? These qualitative signals tell me more about the car's likely future reliability than any reliability survey ever could. Let me shift gears and talk about something that's been fundamentally reshaping the used car market in ways that most buyers haven't fully processed yet, and that's the impact of electrification. Not electric cars themselves, although we'll get to those, but the broader ripple effects of the automotive industry's pivot toward electrification and how it's changing the value equations for traditional internal combustion vehicles. Here's the dynamic that's playing out right now. Automakers are investing billions, in some cases tens of billions, in electric vehicle development. Ford has committed over $50 billion to its EV transition. General Motors has pledged $35 billion. Volkswagen Group is spending over $100 billion globally. That money has to come from somewhere, and in many cases, it's coming at the expense of internal combustion engine development. Fewer resources are being allocated to refining existing gas and diesel powertrains. Some engines are being discontinued entirely. The Toyota 2UR GSE 5.0-liter V8 that powers the Lexus RCF and LC500 is widely expected to be the last naturally aspirated V8 Toyota will ever build. The Stellantis 6.2-liter Hemi V8, the heart of the Dodge Challenger and Charger, has already been discontinued for mainstream applications. This is where it gets really interesting for used car buyers, because as these engines disappear from new car showrooms, the used cars that contain them become increasingly special. Not necessarily more valuable in a monetary sense, at least not immediately, but more special in terms of what they represent. A naturally aspirated V8 with a manual transmission is becoming a genuinely rare configuration. Within a decade, it may be functionally unavailable in any new car at any price. The used market is the only place these experiences will exist. Look at what's already happening with prices for certain iconic models. The BMW E46 M3, particularly with the 6-speed manual, has appreciated significantly over the past 5 years. Clean examples that traded for $18,000 to $22,000 in 2019 are now commanding $30,000 to $45,000, depending on color, mileage, and condition. The Porsche 997.2 911, the last of the hydraulically assisted steering 911s, has similarly climbed from the mid-$50,000 range to $75,000 or more for clean examples. The Honda S2000, once a $15,000 used sports car, now regularly sells for $30,000 to $50,000. Now you might be thinking, great, so I should buy a manual V8 sports car as an investment. And I want to pump the brakes on that idea immediately. Speculative car buying is a terrible strategy for most people. The cars that have appreciated are the ones that were already recognized as special when they were current. They had limited production numbers, devoted enthusiast followings, and specific characteristics that made them benchmarks. Most cars, even enthusiast cars, do not appreciate. For every E46 M3 success story, there are dozens of cars that people bought hoping they'd go up in value and watched them continue to depreciate. That Infiniti G37S you bought because it has the VQ37 and a manual, it's not becoming the next collector car. It's becoming a $9,000 used sports sedan, which is fine if that's what you wanted, but it's not an investment. The smarter approach is to buy cars that you want to drive, maintain them meticulously, and accept that any appreciation is a bonus rather than an expectation. If you want a Lexus LC500 because the 5.0-liter V8 sounds like an orchestra and the design makes you stop and stare every time you walk up to it, buy one, enjoy it. Maintain it. And yes, it will probably hold its value well because of the factors I described, but buy it because you love it, not because you think you'll make money. Let me talk about electric vehicles in the used market for a moment, because this is an area where the opportunities are genuinely unprecedented, but the risks are also substantial. Used EVs have depreciated more aggressively than almost any other category of vehicle over the past 2 years. A 2021 Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus that sold new for around $40,000 and was trading at $38,000 used in early 2022 can now be found for $23,000 to $26,000. That's a staggering decline. A 2020 Chevrolet Bolt EV that's stickered at $37,000 can be purchased for $14,000 to $17,000. A 2019 Nissan Leaf with reasonable miles can be found under $12,000. The reasons for this aggressive depreciation are multiple. New EV prices have come down significantly due to competition and manufacturer incentives, pulling used prices down with them. Battery degradation concerns, whether justified or not, make buyers nervous about older EVs. The rapid pace of technology improvement means that a 3-year-old EV can feel genuinely outdated compared to current models in terms of range, charging speed, and software features. And federal tax credits for new EVs have made buying new comparatively more attractive. But here's what most people don't realize about used EV batteries. They are dramatically more durable than early fears suggested. Data from Geotab, which tracks hundreds of thousands of fleet vehicles, shows that the average EV battery retains approximately 87% of its original capacity after 200,000 kilometers, or about 124,000 miles. Tesla batteries specifically are showing degradation rates of about 12% over 200,000 miles. For most daily drivers, this means a used EV with 60,000 miles still has the vast majority of its original range available. A 2021 Tesla Model 3 purchase for $24,000 that originally had 263 miles of range likely still has 240 to 250 miles of real-world range. For someone whose daily commute is 40 miles round trip, that's more than adequate. And the operating costs are transformative. No oil changes, no transmission fluid, no spark plugs, no timing belts, no catalytic converters. brake pads last 2 to 3 times longer because of regenerative braking. Fuel costs in the form of electricity run about $35 to $50 per month for average driving versus $150 to $200 for a comparable gas car. Insurance can be higher for Tesla specifically, but for most other EVs, it's comparable to their gas equivalents. The total cost of ownership math on a used EV can be genuinely compelling, but there are real risks that need to be acknowledged honestly. If the battery does fail outside of warranty, replacement costs range from $5,000 for a Nissan Leaf to $15,000 or more for a Tesla. The charging infrastructure, while improving rapidly, is still inconsistent in many parts of the country. If you don't have access to home charging, the convenience equation changes dramatically, and the resale trajectory is uncertain. Will these cars stabilize in value, or will they continue to depreciate as newer, better EVs hit the market? I think the honest answer is that used EVs are excellent choices for specific buyers and specific situations. If you have home charging, a daily commute within the car's comfortable range, and the ability to rent or borrow a gas car for the occasional long trip, a used EV at current prices is arguably the best value in the entire used car market. If you lack home charging, regularly drive long distances, or live in an extremely cold climate where range is significantly reduced, the calculus is different. Let me bring this back to the broader principle that I think underlies all smart used car buying. Information is your most valuable tool. More valuable than negotiating skill, more valuable than mechanical aptitude, more valuable than a good eye for paint condition. The buyer who has done their research, who knows the specific failure modes of the car they're considering, who understands the maintenance schedule and can verify compliance, who has checked the market value across multiple sources, who has gotten a pre-purchase inspection, that buyer will consistently make better purchases than the buyer who walks onto a lot with nothing but a gut feeling and a pre-approval letter. The internet has made information more accessible than ever, but it's also created an overwhelming amount of noise. Forum posts from 2009 about problems that were solved by a technical service bulletin in 2010 still show up in search results and scare people away from perfectly good cars. YouTube channels that specialize in buying the cheapest possible example of an expensive car and then documenting all the failures create the impression that certain brands are unreliable when really the problem was buying the cheapest, most neglected example available. Social media algorithms promote outrage and fear because those emotions drive engagement, so the algorithm shows you horror stories about $20,000 repair bills rather than boring stories about cars that just work. The skill that separates successful used car buyers from unsuccessful ones isn't mechanical knowledge, although that helps. It's the ability to filter signal from noise, to distinguish between a systemic design flaw that affects every example of a model and an isolated incident that happened to one car because its owner never changed the oil. Let me talk about the actual process of buying a used car, because I think even experienced buyers make avoidable mistakes here. The emotional dynamics of a car purchase work against rational decision-making in subtle but powerful ways. You've been searching for weeks or months. You've narrowed your list. You found a car that checks most of your boxes. You drive an hour to see it. It looks pretty good in person. The seller seems nice. The test drive feels right. And at that point, something dangerous happens in your brain. You start to want this specific car. Not a car like this, but this one. And the moment you develop attachment to a specific vehicle before you've completed your due diligence, you've compromised your negotiating position and your judgment simultaneously. I call this the commitment trap, and I've fallen into it myself more times than I'd like to admit. The antidote is simple in concept, but difficult in practice. You have to be willing to walk away from any car at any point in the process, not as a negotiating tactic, although it's effective as one, but as a genuine expression of your standards. There are other cars. There will always be other cars. The right car at the wrong price is the wrong car. The right car with hidden problems is the wrong car. The right car from a seller who won't allow a pre-purchase inspection is almost certainly the wrong car. Because why would someone refuse a $200 inspection unless they know what the inspection will find? Here's a framework I use for evaluating used cars that served me well over the years. I think of it as 3 gates, and a car has to pass through all 3 before I'll buy it.
Gate 1 is market research. Before I even look at a specific car, I research the model extensively. What are the known failure modes? What's the maintenance schedule? What's the typical market price for the year, mileage, and condition I'm targeting? What are the specific options or configurations that affect value and ownership experience? I want to know what I'm getting into before I get emotionally involved with a specific example. Gate 2 is the specific vehicle evaluation. This is where I examine the actual car. Service records, vehicle history report, visual inspection, test drive, and critically, a pre-purchase inspection by an independent mechanic who specializes in the brand. I'm looking for evidence that confirms or contradicts what I learned in Gate 1. Does this specific car match the profile of a well-maintained example? Are there red flags that suggest deferred maintenance or hidden damage? Gate 3 is the financial analysis. What's the total cost of ownership going to look like? Can I afford not just the purchase price, but the insurance, fuel, maintenance, and inevitable repairs? Have I factored in registration, taxes, and any immediate maintenance items that need to be addressed? Is there a financial cushion for unexpected problems? I generally recommend having a reserve fund equal to at least 20% of the car's purchase price set aside for the first year of ownership. If you're buying a $20,000 car, have $4,000 in reserve for repairs and maintenance. If you can't afford both the car and the reserve, you can't afford the car. Now, let me address something that I know is on a lot of people's minds: the question of whether to buy from a dealer or a private party. This is a nuanced question that doesn't have a universal answer. Dealers offer certain protections. In many states, there's an implied warranty on dealer sales. Dealers handle paperwork, registration, and title transfer. Many dealers offer short-term warranties or return policies. The trade-off is price. Dealers need to make a profit, which means their prices are typically 10 to 20% higher than private party sales for comparable vehicles. Private party sales offer better prices, but require more diligence from the buyer. You need to verify the title yourself. You need to handle registration and paperwork. There's typically no warranty and no return policy. The seller's representations about the car's condition are harder to enforce legally if they turn out to be false. But private party sellers also tend to be the original owners or long-term owners who can provide detailed maintenance history and personal knowledge about the car's quirks and history. That information has real value. Here's where most people miss an opportunity. The best used car purchases I've seen come from what I call relationship buying. This means building connections with mechanics, enthusiast communities, and car clubs where you can learn about cars coming up for sale before they hit the open market. When a meticulous owner decides to sell their well-maintained car, the first people who hear about it are usually the people in their network. The car might never even get listed publicly because someone in the community snaps it up immediately. Getting access to these opportunities requires investing time in the community before you need to buy a car, but the payoff can be extraordinary. I also want to mention the role of timing in used car purchases. The market has seasonal patterns that most buyers ignore. Tax refund season, typically February through April, sees increased demand and higher prices. Summer sees elevated demand for convertibles and sports cars. Late fall and early winter often see reduced demand and softer pricing as people prioritize holiday spending over car purchases. If you have the luxury of being flexible on timing, buying in November or December can often save you 5 to 8% compared to buying in March or April. Let me wrap this up with something that I think is the most important perspective shift you can make as a used car buyer. Stop thinking about cars primarily as depreciating assets and start thinking about them as tools that provide utility and experience. Yes, cars lose value over time, but they also provide transportation, convenience, safety, comfort, and in many cases, genuine joy. The goal isn't to minimize depreciation at all costs. The goal is to maximize the ratio of value received to money spent. Sometimes that means buying the boring, reliable Toyota. Sometimes it means buying the exciting, slightly riskier sports car that makes every drive an event. The right answer depends on your priorities, your budget, your mechanical aptitude, and your tolerance for risk. What I want you to take away from this is that the used car market, despite its complexity and its pitfalls, is filled with genuine opportunities for buyers who do their homework. The tools available to you today, vehicle history reports, online repair databases, enthusiast forums, YouTube maintenance guides, mobile pre-purchase inspection services, are better than they've ever been. You have access to more information than any previous generation of car buyers. The question is whether you'll use it. The cars are out there. The well-maintained Lexus IS 350 that's going to give you luxury sedan comfort for Corolla money. The depreciated Kia Stinger GT that punches way above its badge. The youth Tesla Model 3 that's going to cut your fuel bill by 70%. The clean Miata that's going to remind you why you fell in love with driving in the first place. They're all out there, waiting for a buyer who's done the research, set the budget, arranged the inspection, and is ready to pull the trigger with confidence rather than hope. Be that buyer. Do the work, ask the questions, get the inspection, run the numbers, and then, when you find the right car at the right price in the right condition, buy it without hesitation. Because in a market this complex and this volatile, decisiveness backed by preparation is the ultimate competitive advantage. If this helped you think differently about how to approach the used car market, share it with someone who's currently shopping. Drop a comment below telling me what car you're considering and what questions you have. I read every single comment, and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. Until next time, take care of your cars and they'll take care of you. This is Legacy Motoring, and I'll see you in the next one.